Very pleased to introduce Lorne Crerar, who is a founding partner and chairman of the leading Scottish commercial law firm, Harper MacLeod. Lorne is a former deputy chairman of Scottish Enterprise Glasgow. He was convener of the Standards Commission in Scotland and also chair of the Independent Review of Regulation, Audit, Inspection and Complaints Handling of Public Services in Scotland, which reported in September 2007. Lorne joined the board of High in April 2008, prior to taking up the position of chairman in March 2012. Lorne, we're very pleased to have you here this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm conscious it's a very educated audience in relation to the topic I'm going to talk about, but I've got quite a lot of facts that I'd like to share with you that certainly helped me understand the dynamics of what will be happening in the future. This is my first year as chair, has been mentioned, and I think when I did my first 3 months, I went round every part of a very large area. Highlands and Islands Enterprise is more than half of the landmass of Scotland. If you draw a line between Buckie down through Dromoctor Pass to the Mull of Kintyre, well, everything north of that, that's Highlands and Islands. And what struck me when I went round all of the areas, without question, when I asked what did they think of High, what could we do, superfast broadband and connectivity was the #1 requirement they had of our organisation in helping them and economic growth in the Highlands and Islands. So they really want to be very well connected. We have some of the most remote and sparsely communities in the whole of the UK. And over the last 10 years, High has been doing its best to supply basic coverage of broadband, and there's been £14 million of public money spent helping try to improve connectivity. But at the moment, 95% of premises, by that, when I refer to the word premises, I mean domestic and business, can access broadband, but only through their phone line, and some using some wireless technologies, particularly in the Outer Isles, and by satellite. Now, for us, the rollout of next generation broadband takes us into a completely new place. Not just faster speeds for us, but also lots more opportunities to use broadband in a way to increase economic activity. And one of the main problems we have in the Highlands and Islands is the availability of a fibre network, which makes the possibility of next generation broadband very, very limited. Commercial rollout has started with BT, but without public sector intervention, which I'll mention later, that would only mean connectivity of an appropriate level to 1 in 4 of the region's premises. So in light of that background, it's absolutely critical to us, and we are delighted that we are the first part of Scottish Government's rollout, and we are leading one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects ever. It's £146 million, and it's a partnership of Scottish Government, High, BD UK and BT. So it really is a game changer for us. And by the end of the first phase, and the first phase will be at the end of 2016, 84% of homes and businesses across the region will have access to fibre broadband. And our wider ambition clearly is that everyone should, and hopefully by 2020. Now, good connectivity is absolutely going to transform life and work in our region and will be, we believe, a real platform for economic regeneration and economic development. It gives us opportunities for new ways of working, enhanced public services. Go to the Centre for Rural Health here in Inverness and hear about how they're going to try and replicate health services in our remote areas, but it's wholly dependent on good connectivity. It's going to improve our opportunities for international markets and for our key sectors. Look to Inverness and the new life sciences activities, the University of the Highlands and Islands, and business services. I have to go and speak at Contact Centre Association meetings every quarter. They are key to the Highland economy, and the big next thing is not large contact centres, but they believe that home networking with a highly educated workforce which we have will be a really important opportunity to develop wealth in the Highlands and Islands. So, what does this all mean? Well, apart from the infrastructure, I'm going to tell you a bit about that. Clearly, a lot is around education and helping our communities understand better how to make the most of next generation broadband. So there's a lot being done around the Business Gateway, Citizens Online, eSkills UK, and also I'll mention in a minute or two the funds we've made available to BT around research as part of our contract to get us to that extra 16% beyond the 84. So what I found interesting was for the first time I got real stats on how the infrastructure's going to be rolled out. And there's 4 bits to that. There's the fibre backhaul, subsea, exchange upgrade, and access build. So let me tell you a bit about that. The backhaul is the fibre backbone, which you'll know about, which is built by engineers. Now, it will, for us, stretch from Campbelltown in Argyll to Bray in Shetland via new network nerve centres in dozens of towns, which include main settlements such as Oban, Fort William, Aviemore, and Ullapool. This new backbone will have around 800 kilometres of new fibre installed. The finished network will link to existing 1,100 kilometres of existing cable. So it's an absolute game changer for us because without it, broadband and other services which require backhaul, like mobile, would be impossible or at very best, very limited. It creates a vast infrastructure which we believe will be a fantastic legacy for generations to come. Now, in light of the size of our area and some of its remoteness, the installation work is being split into 80 different sections, and of these 80 different sections, there's a huge amount of work required into the laying of cable and all the implications that has for historic, scientific, and for us, natural interest sites. After all that's done, then the cable is literally ploughed into the ground. We anticipate that the significant amount of cable laying will be during 2014, and it's due to be completed in 2015. Now, let me tell you a bit then about the subsea cabling, and that will be in the summer of 2014, and already surveys are going on the west coast identifying departure and arrival points. There will be 400 kilometres of subsea cables at 19 crossings to remote islands, and that's going to be in our peak season, if one can believe that at the moment, May to October, and that will be next year. It's an absolutely mammoth and unprecedented undertaking. It's the most extensive subsea operations ever undertaken by BT in the UK, and it's the first ever with so many seabed crossings, so it's very exciting. The third part to it is the exchange upgrade, and as part of the rollout, BT will be upgrading 250 exchanges across the region, which reach 156,000 homes and businesses, and another 51,000 will be reached by BT's commercial programme, which you'll know about, and that's a 2.5 billion upgrade of 7 exchanges. So that's the exchange upgrade, and then the access build. Once the fibre backbone is in place, then we have this web of additional cabling which goes to our local communities. And the way that will happen will vary, and you'll know more about that than me, but the majority will be by fibre to the cabinet, and that's BT overlaying the copper network from the local exchange to street cabinets with fibre. Fibre to the cabinet offers wholesale broadband speeds of up to 8 megs downstream and 20 megs upstream, excuse me. Engineers will also lay some fibre to the premises, which you'll know offers speeds of 300 megs. It uses fibre all the way from the exchange to customers' homes and businesses. So on top of that, we have to try and understand demand, and where we have particular demand and don't reach it, there's a survey process in hand as to make sure that we can deal with that in the future. So the next question is, when will this all happen? That's the general time frame. Well, there's an enormous amount of planning, as you can imagine, for survey and engineering work. And for residents, we already have numerous applications showing street numbers, when will we have our superfast broadband? Well, in fact, it's only, unfortunately, around the final stage of completion that we can advise people of their access capability. And BT has a standard process for announcing locations publicly as they progress with the rollout. Local people are likely to know about an exchange update 6 months before it becomes available, with the more detailed information available 3 months before it's activated. I understand that the first announcements of exchanges which are being upgraded as part of this project will be towards the end of this year, that's to say 2013, with the first activation being not that far away in March 2014. It's intended that there'll be around 12 quarterly announcements of exchanges in the lifetime in the phase of this project. But the region will see the launch of some next generation broadband before 2014 through, as in Inverness and other towns, announce for BT commercial rollout and are brought into service. And these areas, I'm told, are Oban, Dunoon, Fort William, Dingwall, Forres and Elgin. And BT also be rolling out ADSL 2+ broadband with speeds of up to 20 megs in Alness, Aviemore, Buckie, Fochabers, Granton-on-Spey, Hopetoun, Invergordon, Kirkcall, Lerwick, Lossiemouth, Tain, Thurso and Wick. So there's not a great deal people can do in the meantime until our new fibre network is created. But there's really good reason to be optimistic that next generation broadband will be available to 84% of our premises in the time frame expected. And we also expect that 45% of around 100,000 premises will have access to fibre network by the end of 2014. And that's through this project and through BT's commercial upgrade project. So what about the 16% who are not going to be covered by 2016? Well, the message has got to be you're absolutely not forgotten about, particularly in a region as remote and diverse as ours. And the answer is, to some extent, the deeper we get the fibre network into the Highlands and Islands, the better opportunities we have of access. And as part of the contract with BT that I mentioned to you, there's been a 2.5 million innovation fund, and that innovation fund is about trying to develop technologies, be it through white space or other evolving technologies to reach our most remote areas and the Highlands and Islands. So in terms of the challenges going forward, the majority of customers receiving services through the fibre to the cabinet system will receive broadband speeds well in excess of what they're getting from first generation broadband. Those close to the cabinet can receive download speeds of up to 76 megs. However, there is a minority of customers who are a distance from the cabinet, that's based on the length of the copper wire, not as the crow flies, unfortunately will not receive enhanced service and still will receive very poor ADSL broadband speeds. That's the same throughout the UK, and regrettably, there is no current cost-effective solution to boost broadband speeds beyond 2 on very long copper wires. So that's where we are with that, but we also now run for the government the Community Broadband Scotland Fund, which is a £5 million fund, which is designed to help communities that will not be reached by this current project. So, in short, that's a summary of what HI is about at the moment and next generation broadband. We see it as being the most critical thing that we have been involved in for the Highlands and Islands for many years. Is an absolute game changer for the region, and I don't use the expression lightly. So the 3 strands of infrastructure, raising activities with Business Gateway and others, and availability of community solutions, we really do believe is the oncoming of very exciting times for the Highlands and Islands, and we will be, I hope, satisfying one of the major needs of all of the population here to make sure that we are well connected with the opportunities that has for economic development. So hopefully that's been of some interest to you. And if I can, I'll answer some questions. But there we are.
Great, thank you very much, Lord. Fantastic presentation and really useful to hear the scale of the challenge, both in terms of the geographical area that we have to cover, the subsea cabling in particular, but also that challenge of the final 16%, and that's a well-known challenge. Many of the places that we go to in Scotland, that's what they always talk about. Well, we hear about the commercial deployment, about the solutions for fibre. That's not going to happen here. So, you know, I think those kinds of solutions and that 2.5 million innovation fund is going to be very much a leader, if you like, in looking at those real solutions for the more remote communities. I know Lorne has to go very shortly, but he has very kindly offered to take maybe five minutes.
Well, that's fine. One thing I should have mentioned recently, one of the things the Highlands and Islands is at the moment, we're going through a very opportunistic time. And marine renewables you will read about or evidence or see. And I was recently in Thurso where 30 people from abroad, from China in fact, academics had got off the plane and were coming to evidence what we were doing in marine renewables. And they had an absolute legitimate expectation that they should have great mobile reception and they should get off and be able to use their tablets. And you know, what a pleasure it will be when that actually happens, because it is quite demeaning, I think, that we're not yet able to do that. So expectation of others, we have to match that as well as our own expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, now are there some questions for around the table for Lorne?
As in all these things, I'm very happy not to take any.
I see one hand go up.
Where is the 16%?
Well,
all over the place.
It's all over. It depends. It's just the most remotest community, and actually, the 84% is part of our contractual agreement, and it will only become clear at the end of the project what that 16% is. But safely say it's the most remote parts of our very large community.
The obvious question then is, for that percentage, is there is already satellite.
Yes, but it's very expensive.
At £30 a month?
Well, you're educating me, but it's expensive for many, as I understand it.
Look, Ofcom colleagues will know I've been banging on about this for many years, and Highland Council are getting used to me banging on about it as being the lifeblood. It's a specific question. It really isn't yours, but you might have some influence. It's kind of for BT. I understand that the detailed timetables are, have to be, kept under review all the time. There is a real frustration in some communities, and curiously not the remote ones. I represent a community quite close to this. I call it peri-urban. I've no idea what the real description is, but it's one that I've heard used, which is actually just a mile or two from Inverness, gets crap. They are new houses, and they get terrible quality. They simply don't understand it, and BT has simply put up the shutters and won't say anything about what's going to be done, because they're in discussion with you. We can't say anything. They're very friendly about it, but they won't say anything. Right. Now, we don't need a timetable. We just need to know that actually somebody cares and is going to do it. Okay. And it's not just my patch. I think that is reflected across various areas. And it's not just, we tend to talk about the remote areas, very important, but actually it's a big problem in the not so remote areas, where people's expectations are that they should be able to participate in this.
Well, I'll certainly take that back. I think that there are some maps, I understand. I have seen some mapping of the fibre cabling, which is actually very interesting to see. I should have brought them with me. I thought you would have them. And it shows you where the cabling is actually going in terms of the phasing of the fibre optic to local areas and communities. So maybe you have them and talk about it later.
Forgive me, can I ask you,
yes.
Is that just your project or the commercial part of what BT is doing? Because actually around Inverness and Nairn and places like that, it isn't your...
It incorporates both.
It incorporates both,
yes.
Because that, even to get that out would be really reassuring to people.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, could I come back with a question? Is it possible for somebody now to know how far they are from a cabinet? I have no idea what a cabinet looks like, but if you...
It's a green thing about that size.
So if I go out looking for green things about that size...
I think there are others here much better qualified to tell you that, to answer that question.
Because clearly, I mean, if you are more than a few kilometres from a cabinet, you're going to have a problem whatever happens.
Yes. Yeah.
And that should be clear now to some communities.
I think I will still have a problem.
Can I just say, I think that this conversation and questions reflect the sort of questions I get when I talk about this, whatever it is. And actually, I'm not saying we're missing the point, and I absolutely get what you're saying, and but we are very close to having things happening, and we are the first in Scotland. Yeah. I was at a government meeting recently, and it was talked about Highlands and Islands is the first part of Scotland to roll out next generation broadband to the level that we're doing, and they referred to then it will be the rest of Scotland, and I thought, well, actually, there's a positive. So there's a lot of good things. I mean, I quite understand the devil will be in the detail, but the detail will become much more available, as I tried to explain, as things start to happen.
I think that's a good point about the extent to which communities know when it's going to happen and what's going to happen. And I mean, that question about how far do you have to be, or is there a cabinet near me? I think that's the level of detail that people are actually looking for. And I think that's a good point. I'm going to come to Chris and then Stuart.
Can I just say also, the education about use is predicated by people understanding that they're going to have it and the level they're going to have it to. So I will take that back. That makes absolute sense to me.
What kind of impact will the ongoing delay of the high voltage interconnector to Lewis and Harris have with the rollout of fibre to the?
I don't think it's connected
not connected
at all.
No, because obviously the most cost-effective way you would imagine would be that they put it in at the same time. So
well, one might think putting it in the connector and your optic cable, you might well think that. I don't know the answer, but they are, as best I can understand, different in the context. Bear in mind, we've just been told by SSE it's 2017.
It is, yes.
And I absolutely understand.
No effect on the
and there's no one that wants to see it happen quicker than high. But broadband, we have to get on with, and the lowest common denominator is not the way to approach it.
So the two aren't linked?
No.
Okay.
And final question, I think, to you, Stuart.
I was just going to come back to the timing and the announcements of that, Lorne, and I'm itching to know what the time scale is and where and when. I think actually there's a really important messaging here, and it's critical for people to understand. I think if somebody knows it's not going to be until 2017, then we know that. Yes. But if it's going to be next year or the year after, or we don't know, there's a huge amount of frustration around. So the timescales change.
Okay.
And I understand the anxiety of being pinned to, you said 31st of March I would have it, and it's now the 4th of April and I don't. But I think there is a very clear positive that can be driven from the excellent news. And it's just a wee bit more detail and timescale and rollout as soon as we can. Well,
I mean, it's absolutely not lost in us. And believe me, if we could, we would. Yeah. The contract has very recently been signed. The surveying has just begun. They're doing the West Coast inspections at the moment regarding subsea cabling. I'm acutely conscious that as soon as we can make meaningful information available, we will. And that's wholly linked to education, because it's like e-commerce. What an opportunity for us in the Highlands and Islands. But we have to be able to provide at least some of the detail with that education to make it meaningful. So you are, dare I say, preaching to the converted to some extent.
Great. Well, Lorne, just to thank you again for the excellent presentation and actually some really good questions that I thought are really helpful responses to. We recognise you're just at the start of this very challenging journey, and there's all sorts of things to be sorted out. The devil will be in the detail for a lot of particularly the remote communities. But if I could ask you all to join with me in thanking Lorne in a traditional way.